Admiral Vex-9 stared at the tactical display with what could generously be called confidence, though his subordinates might have described it as the kind of smugness that usually preceded spectacular failure. 50 warships, each capable of glassing a moon, hung in perfect formation around the small blue planet's third moon. All of this, for one human. "Sir," Lieutenant Krill spoke up, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone who'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy, "are you absolutely certain we need this much firepower for a single primitive?" Vex-9 turned his massive head, four eyes blinking in sequence. "Lieutenant, this primitive destroyed 3 of our research stations, stole a Class 7 battlecruiser, and somehow convinced half the Galactic Council that we're the bad guys." He paused, mandibles clicking with irritation. "So yes, I'm fairly certain 50 ships is adequate." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present that adequate had become the Zephyrian military's favorite word since humans had entered the galactic stage. What had once been overwhelming force was now just adequate. What had once been impossible odds was now Tuesday. Incoming transmission from the surface, Communications Officer Trix 2 announced, her voice pitched higher than usual. "It's her." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a woman in her mid-30s with auburn hair tied back in what humans called a ponytail. She wore a simple gray jumpsuit that had seen better decades, and she was sitting in what appeared to be a lawn chair. Behind her, Earth's landscape stretched out in peaceful greens and blues, completely at odds with the Armada currently pointing enough weapons at it to vaporize a small star. Well, Captain Maya Torres said, taking a sip from what looked suspiciously like a beverage with a tiny umbrella in it. "If it isn't the Zephyrian superiority fleet. Love what you've done with the place, boys. Really screams, we're overcompensating for something." Vex-9's secondary arms twitched, a sure sign he was either about to order an orbital bombardment or develop an ulcer. "Captain Torres. You will surrender yourself immediately for crimes against the Galactic Confederacy, or we will be forced to take drastic action." Maya's laugh could have powered a small city. Drastic action? Is that what we're calling it when 50 ships can't catch one woman who learned space combat from YouTube tutorials? She gestured casually at the sky. "Tell me, Admiral, what's your success rate against humans these days? Because from where I'm sitting, it's looking a little underwhelming." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle humming of life support systems and the distant sound of Vex-9's dignity deflating like a punctured balloon. "Sir," Tactical Officer Zorb 6 whispered, leaning closer to the Admiral's chair, "perhaps we should reconsider the approach. Intelligence suggests that humans have a tendency to improvise when cornered." "Improvise?" Vex-9's voice rose an octave. "She's one individual against the most advanced fleet in known space. What could she possibly?" The lights went out, not just on the flagship. On all 50 ships. Simultaneously. In the darkness, Maya's voice continued cheerfully through the speakers. "Oh, did I forget to mention? While you were busy arranging your little parade up there, I may have borrowed a few things from your supply depot on Kepler 442b. Nothing major, just some quantum disruptors, a couple of EMP generators, and your Admiral's personal coffee stash. Sorry about that last one, by the way. It was surprisingly good for military rations." Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in an ominous red glow that would have been dramatic if it weren't so embarrassing. "Impossible," Vex-9 sputtered, his 4 eyes darting between displays that were slowly coming back online. "Our depot is protected by 12 defense platforms and a full garrison." "Was protected," Maya corrected gently. Past tense. "Funny thing about your security protocols, they work great against threats you expect. Not so much against someone who shows up with a food delivery uniform and a smile." Lieutenant Krill was frantically working at his console, his normally gray complexion turning a fascinating shade of green. "Sir, she's right. Kepler 442b went dark 6 hours ago. We assumed it was a communications glitch." "You assumed," Maya's voice carried the kind of amusement usually reserved for watching small children try to open childproof bottles, that a military depot just casually lost communications. On the same day you decided to park 50 warships around my home planet. She paused for another sip of her drink. I'm starting to understand why humans keep winning these conflicts. Vex-9's primary hands clenched into fists. Lieutenant, full tactical scan of the planet. She must have allies, weapons platforms, something. Sir, Zorb-6 reported, his voice carrying the tone of someone delivering news that would not improve the Admiral's mood. Scans show no weapons, no military installations, no defense grid. Just her. Sitting in that chair. And drinking something with an umbrella in it, Trix, too, added helpfully. The umbrella's important, Maya chimed in, apparently having heard them. It's called morale. You might want to look it up sometime. The Admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound that usually preceded someone being thrown out an airlock. Captain Torres, you will explain how you disabled 50 warships with no apparent technology or support. Oh, that's easy, Maya replied, settling more comfortably in her chair. I used the most dangerous weapon in the human arsenal. Every being on the bridge leaned forward slightly. A plan. The silence that followed was the kind usually reserved for funeral homes and tax audits. Sir, Zorb-6 spoke up tentatively, our systems are coming back online, but there's something else. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple human vessels approaching from the outer system. Ships we've never seen before. Maya's grin was audible in her voice. Did I mention I sent out a few invitations? Turns out, when you threaten to glass someone's homeworld, their friends and family tend to take it personally. Vex-9's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display, watching as dozens of blips appeared at the edge of sensor range. They weren't moving in formation. They weren't following standard military protocols. They were coming in fast, chaotic, and completely unpredictably. How many? He asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. 217, last count, Maya said cheerfully. But more keep showing up. Word spreads fast when someone threatens Earth. Plus, I may have mentioned that whoever takes out the most Zephyrian ships gets naming rights to the next space station. This is preposterous. Vex-9 roared. 200 civilian vessels against our fleet? It's military suicide. You know, Maya mused, that's exactly what you said about one human against 50 ships. How's that working out for you so far? The Admiral looked around his bridge at officers who were suddenly finding their control panels fascinating, at displays showing incoming ships that shouldn't exist, at a tactical situation that made no sense according to everything he'd learned in 3 decades of military service. Captain Torres, he said finally, what do you want? Well, Maya replied, first, I want you to turn around and go home. Second, I want a formal apology to the Galactic Council for that whole humans are a threat to galactic peace thing. And third. She paused dramatically. I want you to know that this was the easy option. The easy option? Vex-9's voice cracked slightly. The hard option, Maya continued pleasantly, involved my sister Rachel. And trust me, Admiral, you really don't want to meet Rachel when she's angry. She once convinced an entire Regelian armada to surrender using nothing but interpretive dance and a really strongly worded letter. Lieutenant Krill leaned toward his console, his voice barely a whisper. Sir, the incoming human vessels, they're not slowing down. Maya's laugh echoed through the bridge speakers. Oh, did I forget to mention? They're not here to negotiate. The tactical display showed the approaching human ship spreading out in what could charitably be called a formation, if formations were typically designed by caffeinated kindergartners with a grudge against geometry. This is madness, Vex-9 muttered, watching civilian freighters take positions alongside what appeared to be converted pleasure craft and at least one ship that looked suspiciously like a food truck with engine pods welded to it. This, Maya corrected, raising her drink in a toast to the camera, is humanity. We don't do things the easy way, the logical way, or the way that makes sense to anyone else in the galaxy. We do things our way. She took another sip. And our way usually involves a lot more explosions than your military textbooks probably recommend. The first human ship opened fire, and Admiral Vex-9 realized that 50 ships might not have been nearly enough. The first human ship that opened fire wasn't even trying to hit anything. It was a converted garbage scow called Stellar Waste Management, and its opening salvo consisted of what appeared to be actual garbage launched at relativistic speeds. "Sir!" Zorb-6 shouted, watching his tactical display with the kind of horror usually reserved for tax audits and root canal procedures. "They're firing refuse at us." Admiral Vex-9 watched in stunned silence as 47 years of military training collided headfirst with the reality of fighting humans. The garbage struck his flagship's shields and exploded. Not with the satisfying boom of proper military ordnance, but with the wet splat of organic waste mixed with what his sensors identified as fermented fruit products and compressed atmospheric methane. "They weaponized garbage," he whispered, his voice carrying the tone of someone whose worldview had just been fed through a blender. "They actually weaponized garbage." "Sir," Lieutenant Krill reported, his normally steady voice climbing toward hysteria, "the waste is somehow interfering with our sensor array. The organic compounds are creating false readings across all spectrums." Maya's laughter crackled through the communications. "That's recycling, boys. Reduce, reuse, recycle, and occasionally launch it at pompous alien admirals who think 50 ships is a fair fight." She paused. "Oh, and that fermented fruit? That's my Uncle Bob's special moonshine. He'll be so proud to know it finally found a military application." Another human vessel, this one apparently constructed from spare parts and sheer determination, opened fire with what could only be described as a disco ball launcher. Thousands of reflective spheres spread across space, each one spinning lazily while broadcasting what sounded suspiciously like 20th century Earth music. "This is not warfare," Vex-9 muttered, watching his tactical display fill with spinning mirror balls that were somehow scrambling every targeting system in his fleet. This is effective." Communications Officer Trix 2 suggested quietly, the disco balls had created a sensor nightmare. Every reflection created false targets, every spin sent targeting computers into fits of confusion, and the music was apparently being broadcast on every frequency simultaneously, turning military communications into an unwilling dance party. "Sir," Zorb-6 announced, his voice cracking, "the music is somehow interfering with our quantum processors. The mathematical patterns don't match any known waveform." "That's because it's not supposed to make sense," Maya called out cheerfully. "It's called jazz fusion. Humans invented it specifically to confuse artificial intelligence. We had no idea it would work on aliens too, but hey, bonus points for versatility." A third human ship, bearing the questionable name, "Hold My Beer and Watch This," approached at an angle that violated several laws of physics and at least 3 regulations of interstellar navigation. It wasn't firing weapons. It was ramming speed. "Are they insane?" Vex-9 demanded, watching the approaching vessel that was clearly on a collision course with his heavy cruiser, Inevitable Victory. "Probably," Maya admitted. "But that's Captain Eddie Torres, my cousin. He once entered a pod racing tournament using a modified agricultural harvester. Won 3rd place and a lifetime ban from 17 different star systems." The "Hold My Beer and Watch This" struck the Inevitable Victory at exactly the right angle to send both ships spinning like cosmic pinwheels. Eddie's ship, built like a battering ram with delusions of grandeur, somehow survived the impact. The Inevitable Victory's sophisticated Zephyrian engineering, designed for elegant space combat, was not prepared for a head-on collision with what was essentially a flying pile driver operated by someone who thought safety regulations were more like helpful suggestions. "Sir," Krill reported, his composure finally abandoning him entirely. "The Inevitable Victory it's spinning. Uncontrollably. Captain Roth 8 reports that his crew is too dizzy to operate basic systems. Maya raised her drink again. Physics is optional when you're properly motivated, Admiral. Something you folks might want to remember for future reference. The rest of the human fleet had spread out in what military experts would later describe as aggressive randomness. No two ships were doing the same thing. Some were firing conventional weapons. Others were launching increasingly creative projectiles. One appeared to be trying to blind Zephyrian sensors with spotlight displays that spelled out rude messages in 17 different languages. "Sir," Zorb 6 whispered, his voice barely audible above the jazz fusion now playing through every speaker on the bridge, "we're losing ships. Not destroyed, just confused. Disabled." The righteous anger reports that their weapon systems are trying to dance. The glorious purpose says their navigation computer has developed what it calls artistic expression and refuses to plot military courses. Admiral Vex-9 stared at his tactical display, watching the most advanced fleet in Zephyrian history being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be a collection of space pirates, garbage haulers, and at least 3 ships that looked like someone had strapped engines to recreational vehicles. "How?" he asked the universe in general. "How are they doing this? Want to know the secret?" Maya asked, apparently having heard him. "It's because you're fighting the wrong battle, Admiral. You came here to capture one human using overwhelming force and superior technology. Classic military thinking. Very logical. Completely predictable. Another human ship, the optimistic pessimist, had somehow managed to attach itself to a Zephyrian destroyer using what appeared to be magnetic grappling hooks and was now spinning both vessels like a cosmic bola. But humans, Maya continued, we don't fight the battle you expect. We fight the battle we want. Right now, Captain Sarah Mitchell on the optimistic pessimist isn't trying to destroy your destroyer. She's trying to make it dizzy enough that the crew can't remember which button fires the weapons and which button flushes the waste recycling system. That's not a valid military strategy. Vex-9 protested. Says who? Maya replied. Your military academy? The same one that taught you to bring 50 ships against one human? How's that working out? Vex-9 looked around his bridge. Half his officers were holding on to their stations to avoid falling over from the ship's erratic movement. The other half were staring at displays that showed tactical situations no military textbook had ever covered. Jazz fusion continued to pour from the speakers, and somewhere in the distance, he could swear he heard what sounded like human laughter echoing across the communication channels. "Sir," Trix 2 reported, her voice oddly calm given the circumstances, "incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. They're asking if we need assistance." The bridge fell silent except for the music and the distant sounds of space combat that sounded more like a carnival than a battle. "Tell them," Vex-9 said slowly, "that the situation is developing." "Should I mention that we're currently being defeated by disco balls and garbage?" she asked helpfully. "No," Vex-9 replied quickly. "Definitely not." Maya's voice cut through the chaos again. "Admiral, I'm going to give you one more chance. Take your remaining ships, head home, and we'll call this a learning experience. Keep fighting, and I'll have to call in reinforcements." Vex-9 looked at his tactical display. 37 of his 50 ships were either disabled, spinning uncontrollably, or attempting to surrender to vessels that appeared to be constructed from spare parts and optimism. "Reinforcements? You mean there are more humans coming?" "Oh no," Maya said, and her tone carried a cheerfulness that was somehow more terrifying than any threat. "I mean I'll have to call my mom." The bridge went completely silent. "Your mother?" Vex-9 asked weakly. Dr. Elena Torres, former Earth Defense Commander, current head of the Interplanetary Diplomatic Corps, and holder of the galaxy's record for most creative use of a maintenance shuttle in combat. Maya's grin was audible. "She's retired now, but she gets cranky when people interrupt her gardening." "And Admiral?" Today is Tuesday. Tuesday is her day for tending the roses. Vex-9 stared at the tactical display, at his proud fleet being systematically embarrassed by humans who treated warfare like an art project, and made a decision that would save his career, his sanity, and quite possibly his life. All ships, he announced, his voice carrying across the fleet channels, prepare for strategic withdrawal. Strategic withdrawal, sir? Lieutenant Krill asked. We're running away, Vex-9 clarified. As fast as possible. Before they call their mother. As the Zephyrian fleet began its retreat, Maya Torres finished her drink, stood up from her lawn chair, and waved at the departing ships. Safe travels, Admiral, she called out. And remember, next time you want to capture a human, maybe try asking nicely first. We're surprisingly reasonable when people aren't pointing weapons at our planet. The last transmission from Admiral Vex-9 was barely audible, noted. And somewhere in the galaxy, 50 Zephyrian warships limped home with a new understanding of human military doctrine: expect nothing, prepare for everything, and never, ever threaten their family. The official report filed with Zephyrian Command read simply, mission unsuccessful due to insufficient preparation for unconventional tactics. What it didn't mention was that one human with a lawn chair and a sense of humor had just rewritten the rules of interstellar warfare, and she'd done it without spilling her drink.